Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Spiritual Unity Radio Network, a station dedicated to the concept that all manifestations of the divine are equally valid. Join Reverend Terry Power HP, Robin McKean, and all the hosts for programming covering a wide range of spiritual topics, right here on Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to an emerging forest, a safe place where we have the freedom to think about life without judgment. We take a look at society, we examine it, and we allow for the possibility of something new, something different. And now, here's your host, Alan Ritter.
Well, welcome everybody to this first show of the new calendar year. The last show was the New Year's Eve show last week. This is the first show of 2018, January 7th. And I am really pleased to introduce my guest tonight. My guest tonight is an interesting poet, and her name is Santha Cooke. Hi, Santha. How are you this evening?
I'm well. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here.
And also in our conference room is David Whitman. Hi, David.
Hello, Alan. Hi, Santha. How are you both tonight?
Very well. Santha is so good to talk to you, and we tried to do this once before, but it was supposed to happen tonight, and I'm glad that everything lined up so that it could happen tonight. So I don't even know how to get into introducing. I don't really have a stock way of introducing somebody who writes. I write. I write a lot, but I sort of had to it's just sort of something that you like, hey, I write. So I just do it to exercise my demons or whatever you want to say, or I do it because it just flows from me naturally, and it's just something that happens, and it just sort of happens. I just sort of do it. But that's me, and everybody's different. So, what was your? You started at a certain time of your life, or there were certain signs, or you had certain inspiration. What was the hatching of the capability and the path, or the early path for you?
Well, I write a few different things. I write journal. I journal sometimes, and it seems like language is always flowing in me. Like if I stop, I'll hear and listen. I'll hear something about what's going on. But we were specifically talking about poetry in this conversation, and I have written some poetry, and as you asked me about it, and I was thinking about it, like, where did this idea that I could write poetry even ever come from? And the more I thought about it, the more I have the idea that it's just been all around me. I just went up to look for 2 other books that I keep on my shelf. One is A Child's Garden of Verses that my grandmother loved, that book of poetry by Robert Louis Stevenson. You know, my grandmother was born in 1892, and this is poetry from back in her day. And then another one was A.A. Milne, Child's Garden of Verses, which I used to read to my kids when they were young. And there's just something about poetry that's like musical. It has a rhythm, and it's very evocative. My mother loves to play with doggerel, and she loves to play with words. And a lot of her jokes are word game jokes. And so I just grew up with people that like to play with words. And somewhere along the line, I just got the idea I could do that too. And even when I was very young, like 8 or 9 years old, I wrote a few little small poems. And I just enjoyed them. I think I especially enjoyed the rhythm, but I also just so enjoyed the imagery. And so at some point it becomes like, here's this thing, write it down. It just sort of shows up and arrives in my awareness. Write it down. And things sort of deliver themselves inside of me, like, here is a poem delivered to you. Does that make sense?
So you basically, I haven't interviewed hundreds and hundreds of poets, or hundreds and hundreds of writers. So I kind of know what I do, and I kind of know that as I interview many people, I'm going to find out many different ways that things come to one. So what you're saying is you get like a whole verse or a whole set of verses, or you get a whole product item delivered to you. Is that right?
Well, it's not always completely. It's sometimes like you have to open the package, right? You have to open it. Like I'm looking here in this paper. I'm looking for one of the first poems that I wrote here, which was a long time ago. I mean, I was probably 8 years old. It's just this little doggerel-y poem that I wrote when I was 8. It says, I wish every day was a holiday. I'd wear my old clothes and do nothing but play. In summers, each day would be 4th of July. Ice cream, lemonades, and balloons I'd buy. At least 40 days I would have Halloween and make jack-o'-lanterns, the biggest you've seen. There's just something about the rhythm and the doggerel of it that just felt like fun, and it felt like it led me along in that moment. I don't think that one was delivered whole. I just think it was delivered like, how do I stretch this? I want this rhythm to do a certain thing. I want these rhymes to do a certain thing. What words can I pull in? What else can I do on the theme of I wish every day was a holiday? And we've got 1, 2, 6 lines of poems there, like 3 sets of rhyming couplets, I guess they would be called. But, and they just show up in my mind like that, like just playing around with words and having them bounce and land. So that one's just a fun, playful one, and they're not always rhyming. Time is a rock, still and immovable, like a wagon wheel stuck in quicksand. But yet it is a stone rolling downhill, gathering others, unstoppable and unforgettable. Once again, I was like 8 years old, and it was like these images, like something that is both stopped but also moving. It's like it goes on forever, but it also moves through quickly. So that's like a contrasting of images, and it doesn't really have to do with rhymes. It has to do with imagery and transmitting an image.
Painting word pictures, would you say?
What?
Painting word pictures.
Making word pictures, yeah. Yeah. Ants
Or
are very
or
busy little animals. See how hard they work. Bang. Done. So that has both.
Yeah.
It's just a fun thing. It's a fun material to play with. It's completely free. It completely brings every emotion, every sensory experience can be evoked because we think in language, right? And we've learned to translate our experiences into words, so we can evoke everything in the universe through words, through poetry. I just think that it turns me on. It's just beautiful and fun.
Can I ask about your creative process for a second?
Sure.
Do you find when you write, are you writing like everything all at once? Do you write like, say, it all comes to you in 15 minutes, you write it all down and then it's over? Or do you find you start writing it, you come back to it? Is it more of a process, or is it more of an inspiration? As far as like, do you write quickly and then it's done, or do you write over time and come back to it?
Well, I write. It's an interesting experience because when I write, once again, we're talking about writing poetry. Like, I'll write other things too, but I don't write stories. I just write, I don't write fictional things. Mm-hmm. I write what I see. When I draw what I see. It's like a transmission that comes through. So some of them are very short. Like more recently, I have about 35 poems that I want to make into a book. Mm-hmm. And the first one is entitled Poetry. And it's words pluck heartstrings, sounding a chord on the harp of the world. So it's like a functional idea, like it's like an idea of what is happening when you make poetry. And it's the idea that this whole world is out there, and when you bring an image into someone's mind, something's happening in the world. So that's very short, and that would come just as one. Like, I might struggle because I might get an image and a feeling, but then you have to find the words that capture or hold. The words are like a container to hold a feeling. Even the image is like a container. The words are maybe, here's an image of a harp of the world and a chord and heartstrings and plucking heartstrings. So it's an image. It are words that evoke an image, and the intention behind the image is to hold a feeling, like a feeling of amazement, or you're like, wow, just imagine that harp of the world. It's huge, right? And just this little word, this little drop, boom, bong, and it's touching it, and it's vibrating the whole thing through poetry. And I have all these books of poetry, and all these people have been doing that through their poetry. So when I write, I'm like, wow, I can do that too. And nobody has ever, I didn't read in any of these books. There's a lot of images in my poetry that I find in other poetry too. Someone else has discovered the same thing and wants to say it. But this particular one, I haven't seen it in any of the other books of poetry that I've read. So this one is unique. But then when you get to a longer poem, I think I've read to you once before, David, my poetry of Declaration of Independence.
I like that a lot. Yes.
In May, I don't stop to write poetry. Now that is a longer idea. So sometimes the first words show up, like in May, I don't stop to write poetry. Oh. But then how do you weave together the language that will carry the listener or the reader from the beginning of the thought through the end of the thought, evoking through imagery, and get at the meaning, like it could be both very like quotidien, like just every day. You know, I'm busy in the garden in May. I don't have time to write poetry. But it's deeper than that because there's a whole thing about relationship. There's a whole thing about what's going on with me and what's going on with the things. It's about gardening and what's going on outdoors in the garden in the month of May and the whole relationship between those. So there are words in here that, like there's one, I can read the whole thing if you want me to, but there's one that says, I, master and slave to the garden, toil to contain, direct, channel, shape, control. And control is in italics. So it's like those words right there are big words. They hold a lot. So when you want to find those words, when you find those words, it's like you have to feel into what words will they be, because there could be other words there. Yeah, you want to hear that? I can read this. Shall I read this?
Yeah, read the whole thing, certainly.
Okay. So it's called Declaration of Independence. And it says, in May, I don't stop. In May, the garden calls, beckons, summons, commands. From bird song to dusk, they work at it, those outdoor growing things. Every day, unceasing, it is impossible to distract them from their task. Now, here, this is their only chance at life. And I, master and slave, toil to contain, direct, channel, shape, control. In August, it won't matter so much. In August, what has happened will be. At that time, we will sit down, rest, and enjoy the harvest. But to do so, now, we must lift soil, haul water and stones. Now is when the outcome is determined. Rebellion, revolt. Something else is growing too. Some growing point presses up through crevices between bones and beaten earth. Time to stop. Time to cultivate that shoot. Support those other blossoms. Let those outdoor things do what they will. Here is a poem written in May. So it's complicated what's in there, right?
Yeah.
It's complex. There's a whole bunch of different relationships going on. So to find the words that, like, trace that line isn't always instantaneous, but it's like walking along a knife edge, right? Like, you know if you're a little bit leaning to one side or leaning to the other, and it doesn't feel right. So it's a process of having, like, here I am, and I'm walking out my door to go out to the garden, and it's like, wait a minute, what's happening? What's going on here inside of me in relationship to this thing that I'm about to do? But I want to have this other life that's a life of words and of thought, not just of labor and toil. And so, which I also love, but it's like the whole way the year moves. And a lot of these poems are nature-based and they're seasonal, and they're about a moment and what that moment asks of you when you're going to live in relationship with nature and live a life that's based in relationship with nature. A lot of these poems are like that. And so you feel that in yourself. Like here I am walking out the door and I feel, wait a minute, there's something else going on here. So then we have to pause from the garden work to discern these words. But it generally might take like a day and then even now, like going back to some of these, I even made some changes today looking at them. Like getting rid of words, getting rid of excess words. I don't like there to be, I like it to be like as distilled as it can be. I like the words to be like whoosh, very distilled, as much as I can do, and carry that message. Does that make sense?
Totally agree.
It is.
Totally
it's
agree.
Interesting.
Yeah.
As
I do
writer,
do that all the time. Yeah.
I never do.
You never do? When you're writing,
I feel I captured a moment. If I go back to it, I don't ever change it. I probably maybe should, but I feel like I've captured the moment. To go back would be to I don't know. It would be like trying to paint over something I just painted. I just don't do it. But I can understand why you would. It's just that's not really. There's an imperfection to my writing that I'm okay with.
Yeah. There is no perfection anyway, right?
True.
There's no such thing as perfection.
I'm not going to go there.
Anyway, right. And these are matters of personal choice, right? And how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
These are matters of how it feels. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true, because you have your words are malleable because the words are not the point. Your words can change. The words can change if you sit with it for however long you sit with it, and you come back and you say, now I understand the feeling better, or I understand the language to convey it better, or I understand the limitation of the phrase that I used. So the words, I said it a minute ago, you're conveying something beyond the words.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And that makes me think of one more of these poems. Since we're talking about poems, I'm just going to be greedy and keep on telling you all my poems since you asked, right? You want to hear one more?
Well, you should.
Keep going.
Please. Don't. That's why we're here.
Okay. Well, I love this particular one. I don't know if David has heard this or not. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, it's the very next one. So this is a poem about a word. And I think you could write a poem like this about every single word in every single language on the planet, which is a tempting thought to me, actually. I haven't done it, and I don't know that I ever will, but it's really tempting. So the name of this poem is called Ground. Ground stones become ground, made succulent by cellulose from fallen leaves and cast off husks of bacteria. They blanket the world, over, under, beneath, before all else. That deep growl through which a full-fleshed cobble or boulder is converted to dust penetrates the mystery of our minds, travels through the soft tangle of neurons, just as a vein of shale, ancient mud, clay transformed once more to stone, wends an unknown path between immovable shoulders, immense, unbounded, implacable of stone. Through unlit depths it finds its way by hidden rivulets and rivers, emerges into crystal caverns of meaning. Scratching to lay bare the surface, we feel but cannot see all that lies beneath. The ancient ones, the ancestors, stand pointing.
Hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
very much.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's the feeling. It's not the words.
It's not the words, but the words are used to call the feeling, because words are actually magic spells.
Yeah.
That's why the ancient ones are standing pointing. They're standing pointing with these words that they've given us, that we've inherited, that we learned when we were tiny. And these words are like huge packages. Like before in that other poem when I was saying, contain, direct, channel, shape, control. It beckons, calls, summons, commands. These words are like packages that hold huge messages.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That are way bigger than what we might say. Yeah, they point to things.
They're programs. They're programs.
Yeah.
They basically say, if you use this word, this is what you're conveying to someone else. But you're also using the word, and when you're using it, it's actually taking hold of you.
That's right. You are in an interaction. You are in relationship to an energy, to a quality. And you have this whole set. This is what I'm saying about loving words. Like it's a material that we all have. And they're just there. It's like plucking cherries off of a fully laden tree.
Hmm.
And they're so rich and they're so full, they have so much juice. And they have quality. Or maybe there's a peach tree or an orange tree. And they're right there and you just pluck them. And then, like the word blue, I'm looking at a picture right now that's a blue picture that my daughter made. It's like, wow, blue. And it's amazing. That's why it's fun to write poetry, because it's fun to use these words. Can I read you another one?
Sure, go ahead.
If you want to hear. Yeah. Color, like a song. My heart, my eyes, my arms open. I dance. Sunset music in the sky. Every night a new symphony. Purple, gold, scarlet, lavender, white, and gray, so delicate as to tear your heart, or filled with proud intensity. Outside my window each evening, strength and grace seize attention until the final reprise. October leaves resonate, vibrant as muted trumpets, when the air sings with blueness and warmth, and black crows on a white snowfield drop into my eyes like the rounded notes of an oboe. Then there's the harmony of a snowy dawn. Gray melodies weave in and out, charcoal and dove weave in and out, around one another. Here blushed pink where twigs of dogwood glow, there illuminated by golden notes of beech or maple which refuse to yield to winter's grasp. Such passion. My heart stops. My eyes burst open. I send forth columns of song to join with the colors of the world.
How do you feel that nature informs your writing? Your living in the country and everything. How do you feel that really What is the connection there?
David, can I interrupt for a moment? So this is a really opportune moment to take our break, and I'll welcome that. I'll welcome that question after we surf through this break. So the song I'll play is Dave the Bard, Hal and Toe, and see y'all in about 4 minutes.
Take no scorn to wear the horn. It was the crest when you were born. Your father wore it, and your father wore it too. Hal and Toe, Johnny run below. We were up long before the day to welcome in the summertime, welcome in the mail. The summer is a-coming in, and winter's gone away. Robin Hood and Little John have both gone to the fair, and we shall to the merry green wood.